Hello, welcome to this video on Photography TV. During this episode, we're going to review the Sony RX100 Mark V. And during this review, we're going to do a lot of different things. First, we're going to start by talking about the specs and the features that make this camera unique. We'll talk about all the specs and the features, and we'll even show you some of the menu items that really make this camera stand out. Second, we're going to actually talk about the video quality. We'll take it out into the field and give you some real video examples along with some of the audio quality as well. And then third, because this is Photography TV, we're going to talk about this camera from a photography perspective and show you some examples of pictures that we were able to capture with this camera. It's going to be a great review for a great camera. Let's get started. All right, now that we're here at Photography TV, please subscribe to us on YouTube, and let's get started with the review of the Sony RX100 Mark V. Let's get started with some of the specs and features that make this camera unique. Probably one of the most important features on this camera is the lens. The lens on this camera is very high quality. It's actually from Sony, but it's partnered with Zeiss. If you're not familiar with Zeiss lenses, they are one of the best in the industry. So Zeiss is in the lens of this particular camera. And the setup for the lens is that this is an f1.8 to 2.8. That's a variable aperture lens. What it means is that at the lens's widest setting, that it's going to be able to go to an aperture of 1.8, which is really good for low light situations or for really creating more blur in the picture, the background depth of field essentially with 1.8. In fact, that's one of the downsides to the variable aperture is that the 1.8 to 2.8 is that as you begin to zoom, what you're going to see from an aperture perspective is that I set it to 1.8 and I'm at the widest that this lens goes, which is from a full frame equivalent. It's 24 millimeters. Now this is not a full frame camera, it's a crop sensor which we'll review, but at that equivalent, 24 millimeters, it can go down to f1.8. But watch, right as I begin to zoom, even at 25 millimeters, just one tiny little zoom, I've already gone to f2.0 at the lowest aperture. So that 1.8 is really only at the widest setting. And you can see right at about 34 millimeters is when it reaches that 2.8 as the lowest aperture that I can go at a zoomed in rate of about 34 millimeters perspective. So then obviously it goes all the way out to 70 millimeters and it can stay at 2.8. So it's a variable aperture lens, 1.8 to 2.8. But important thing to know about that is that it is going to get away from the 1.8 pretty quick within anything that you zoom in. And then about 2.8 is where you're going to stay after that. So that's important to know for those of you that are very familiar with aperture and the benefits that it can provide at lower apertures. So you definitely want to know that. In addition, from a size perspective, you can see this camera is relatively small, easily fits into the palm of my hand. From a weight perspective, I would say it's about the weight of a baseball. So really easy to carry around. That's probably one of the best features of this camera is its compact size, but yet the quality of the video, the camera that you're getting in a very compact size is absolutely fantastic. Now, because it's so small, it actually does create a little bit of challenge from taking pictures or doing video work. Because it is so small, it's easy to, a little tougher to get a good handle on it. So one of the things that I suggest, I actually have it here, is actually just picking up some sort of little grip handle that you can attach it to. So I found this one on Amazon. Looks like it's a Hoke QR50 handle. I'll put a little link to that in the description. This was only about $20, but it really makes it easier to move around with. So let me put it on here. All right, so now I've got the handle and it just makes it a lot easier to handle, especially if you're doing vlog-like video, selfie mode, things like that. And that's another feature I'll review is the flip up screen. And so here's an example of what the video looks like coming directly from the RX100 in selfie mode. And so you can see really easy to hold, easy to talk to. I'll even flip to the audio directly from the camera so you can hear exactly what that sounds like. And I think it does a really good job exposing the shot, focusing on me. It's got that face recognition software. Just got a comment on YouTube, so that's cool. It just popped up. Close that. Little subliminal messaging, Photography TV. Check us out. Subscribe to us on YouTube. But even with the light in the background, it's doing a decent job exposing me. And you can see when I move around, it automatically adjusts the exposure. So when it's backlit like that, I'm going to be a little bit darker just due to the auto exposure settings, and obviously you can do that manually. But that's just a little bit of example of selfie mode coming right out of the camera, the audio. Now I can flip back to the nice audio directly from the external audio. So that was the selfie screen. Really great. I do recommend having that handle. But another spec and feature that I really like about the Sony RX100 is the viewfinder. So for a compact camera like this, to have a viewfinder, it's an electronic viewfinder, is absolutely fantastic. That's just a personal preference of mine. When I'm taking photos, I probably wouldn't use it much for video, but when I'm taking photos, I love to look through a viewfinder. It just allows me to get more into the shot. So having an electronic viewfinder is absolutely fantastic. Now, a quick note, when you do pull out the viewfinder, you actually have to, let me see if I can get you a good shot of this. You have to extend it out. Otherwise, it's totally out of focus. Probably the first time I pulled that up, I was looking through it. I thought the camera was broken. But once you pull it out, then you can focus it. You can actually look right into it. Not sure why I'm looking into it because you can't see what I'm seeing. But it is an electronic viewfinder. What's great about an electronic viewfinder is you can actually see your exposure of the shot before the shot. It's actually showing you exactly what it's going to look like electronically. So if you're shooting manual, photography-wise, you can actually see if you're overexposed, underexposed. Very easy to make those adjustments. So I love the electronic viewfinder. Those are a few of the specs as it relates to, we'll call it the external side of the camera. The lens, the size and the weight, the flip screen, and the electronic viewfinder. Let's now go into the camera and show you some of the settings within the camera as far as what it has to offer. So to do that, I'm gonna actually pull up another piece of gear. This is my Atomos Ninja 2, because I'm actually gonna be able to sync it up directly into the camera so you can see what the menu system looks like. So give me just a second and let me find my cord to sync that up somewhere. Not sure what I did with it. All right, so now that I got synced up, what I'm gonna actually show you, and the reason I'm using the Atomos is I'm gonna be able to put this full screen on the screen so you can actually see exactly what the menu system looks like and what I think are some of the key features that the camera has to offer. So I'm actually in the menu system. Probably one of the most important features that this camera offers are the different video formats. So you can actually see here all of the different video formats. You can shoot an MP4, which is what I like to shoot with a lot of times. It's just the easiest to take it right out of the camera into your editing software for video. But you can shoot in all these different video settings, specifically 4K. So you can shoot 4K with this camera. I think it has about a max 4K timeline of about 5 minutes for 4K shooting. All right, so those are a few of the different video settings that you can use, but take a look at the recording settings. You have a lot of different options here. You can shoot in 60p, 1080, 60 frames per second, 30 frames per second. Obviously you can go down from there, but if you go into some of these other settings, you can actually you can see here up to 120 frames per second in traditional video shooting. So 120 frames per second, the benefit of that is that you can slow that motion down in your video editing software and get a really smooth, slow motion look with 120 frames per second. Now, if you like slow motion, this is a big benefit to this camera, is the ability to do high frame rate shooting beyond 120 frames. So 120 frames is a lot of frames per second. You can get great slow motion with that. But let's say you wanted to do super slow motion. You can actually go into what's called the HFR setting. It stands for high frame rate shooting. And so you can actually go in and set different recording settings. So I'm actually got this currently set for 30p, which means it's going to record super high frame rate, but then convert it down to 30 frames, which is how it slows it down. It actually does the slow motion for you automatically with the HFR setting. So if shooting at 30 frames per second equivalent, when it condenses that high frame rate setting, the frame rate is 240 frames per second. And so what's important to think about that is if you're shooting in 30 frames, but capturing at 240 frames, you're actually doing it 8 times slow motion. And take a look at all the different options that you have. You could do it at 240 frames. You could do it at 480 frames per second, which is 16 times slow motion. or you can go all the way to 960 frames per second, which in this case, converted back down to 30 frames per second, is 32 times slow motion. Again, you got different options to what the original recording setting is. If it's 60 frames per second, it doesn't go quite as slow, but you can see I typically do it around 30 frames per second, and I've got a lot of different options. Now, an important note on the high frame rate shooting is that it only does it for about 2 seconds. Because if you're slowing down at 16 times slow motion or 32 times slow motion, 2 seconds can actually last a pretty decent amount of time. But when you're capturing it, only having 2 seconds to capture it is pretty quick. So it actually allows you to do the recording timing either as a start trigger or an end trigger. What that means is when I hit record, I can either start my 2 seconds at the beginning of when I hit record, or I can capture the action and then hit the button to record it after the 2 seconds. So allows it just to kind of time when you capture that 2 seconds in slow motion. But high frame rate settings is absolutely a benefit to the Sony RX100, where you can capture high quality slow motion video right in the camera, whether you do it in the high frame rate setting, which gives you that 2 second kind of window, pretty short term, or if you actually go back to what we showed you earlier and you can actually record it at 120 frames per second in traditional shooting mode. Those are a few of the settings from video that I really want to review. I think they make this camera absolutely stand out. From a photography perspective, some of the settings that really make it stand out are that from a shutter speed perspective, you can go as high as 1/32,000th of a second in shutter speed. That is an absolutely incredibly fast shutter speed. My Sony A99, which is a high-end SLT camera, can only go to 1/8000th of a second. This can go to 1/32,000th of a second. If you need a freeze motion from a photography perspective, this camera can absolutely do it. Also, from a multi-burst perspective in photography, taking multiple images all in a row, it can actually shoot 24 images per second. That is extremely fast. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the photography section of this review, but those are a few of the settings that I want to review with you that really make this camera stand out. Now, let's dive deeper into the video. So here's a recent video from a camping trip that I went on with my kids, and I'm gonna let you just see the video captured directly from the Sony RX100 and actually let you hear the audio, really more in just a vlogging, family, vacation type style. We'll play just a little bit of this video so you can actually see the quality of the video out and about and hear the audio. Now, the lighting was not that great. It was broad daylight, so it's not the perfect lighting for the video, but it's real actionable video and you can see it directly from the field. Now let's just turn it over where we can actually hear the audio and see exactly what it sounds like from a vlog, vacation type video.
Because my dad right here does photography TV. That's his channel, and that's his channel, photographytv.com. So just click up here and you can see all of his videos. Just click up here and you can see all of them. And hit the subscribe button right here.
Thank you, Haley.
Woo!
All right, let's go. Show me where we're going, guys.
Just remember to click up here. Here you go. No. Take my hand.
Oh, that's good, bub.
Here, I'll help. You said follow your steps. Okay.
There you go. Climb up there, bro. Stop. You're going straight first. Ready? Watch out. 1, 2.
I'm bleeding.
You got it? You got it?
Hey, I see some people. Hi, guys!
All right. So that's just a little bit of video captured out in the field, moving around, hearing the audio, that type of thing. Now, one other tip I want to give you as it relates to the camera is that a lot of that was the audio captured directly from the camera, which from a vlogging and out and about perspective, the onboard microphone is very good. It's going to satisfy almost every one of your needs. But if you are doing more of a tutorial video or you actually do want better audio, a tip that I would give you is to actually You cannot plug a microphone directly into this camera. That's an unfortunate thing, but what you can do is do an external audio and sync it up later. So one tip that I give is that I actually have a Rode lavalier mic, and I'll actually plug, here, let me pull the mic out. So I have this little lavalier mic, and I actually plug it into my phone, plug it on, and then I can actually use this for the video and use this as the audio source and sync it up in editing. So that is a quick tip to improve the audio. If you don't want, just the audio that comes on board, you can actually do something simple with an external microphone source, whether you use your phone or you use a Zoom external audio recorder. That's probably even better. Something to do external audio recording and just sync it up in post. And here's an example I did out in the field that actually shows the difference between the two, so you can see the onboard microphone or using like a Rode lavalier mic and an external audio source and syncing it up. Listen to the difference and you'll see why it can be important to get that better audio. So you can hear this is the audio straight from the camera. And straight out of the camera, it really does work pretty good, the audio. So if you are vlogging or you're just going out and about and shooting video, the audio straight out of the camera from the RX100 is pretty good quality. But if you want to improve the audio, say you're doing a more planned out shoot or just want better audio and you don't mind syncing it up, take a listen to the audio once you do an external audio sync. And this is using a Rode lavalier mic, as you can see here, just attached to my shirt there. Really simple setup. I've got it plugged into my iPhone, but you can hear there's definitely an improvement in the audio when you use an external audio source. So unfortunately, the RX100 does not have a microphone input, so there's no way to just plug the Rode mic directly into the camera, but you can do it, just syncing it here. I've got the phone as the input recorder, and then I'll just sync it up in editing. So again, good audio coming straight out of the camera, but you can hear definitely an improvement in the audio when you are using an external audio source. And I think using a lavalier mic plugged right into the phone is a really simple way to do it. All right, let's keep going with the review. We've shown you some of the out in the field video. We talked about audio. And so next, let's actually show you what the high frame rate slow motion settings look like. I showed you that earlier in the settings. Here is 240 frames per second at 30p. So this was the 8 times slow motion. And then here is 480 frames per second. This is 16 times slow motion. I thought it would be awesome to use the Nerf arrows to hit this water and make it explode. And then lastly, here's the 960 frames per second. This is 32 times slow motion. And you can see it's just a really cool way to capture good slow motion video. And so that I thought would be a really cool way to do that. All right, now in keeping with the video part of this review, the next thing I want to talk about is the focusing that this camera has, because it has face recognition. All right, so now I'm going to go back into the selfie mode to talk about focusing. This is autofocusing with the Sony RX100. What's great about it, you can see this white square around my face. I'm actually using the Atomos to record directly from the camera, so it's not just the video. That white square would not actually be on the real video. As you can see, here's the real video. But by using the Atomos, I'm actually capturing what is directly from the camera. And what I like about that is you can see that white square around my face. That's the auto focusing that's happening. It's got face recognition software within it. And what's great about that, watch as I hold the camera still and I move around. That white box is following my face around. It's even better if I was further away from the camera, it would truly track me as I go. So if you're moving around, let's say you're doing different things with it, it's going to be able to track you. That's absolutely fantastic because it's going to lock that focus, keep the picture sharp, which is what you want. So that's the auto tracking that goes on within the Sony RX100. Now, another thing to be thinking about for focusing is actually using manual focus. So let me go back into the menu setting here and show you one of the benefits of manual focus is that the Sony RX100 has peak focusing. And what that is, let me actually show you here. So within manual focus, you can actually set the setting down here, peaking level. You can do high, mid, low. It's basically going to show you how much peaking is done. I always go to peaking color yellow. So now I'm going to show you what that can do and why it's important to have peak focusing on your camera to be able to see the focus area. I'm going to do a quick setup and show you how you can actually rack focus and do some pretty cool stuff. So give me just a second. All right, so what peak focusing is, now you can see here on the camera, see all the yellow on the screen? That's peak focusing. So whatever's in yellow is actually in focus. So as I can rack focus, I can go from this to the back. So you can see now everything's in focus in the back. And so that's why it's all peaked out in yellow. But I can actually rotate that and just isolate the camera in front. So by having that peak focusing in yellow, it really lets you control what you're focusing on, which is really great from a camera perspective. You're able to rack focus, do that different visual effect from a focus perspective, which is really cool. Very easy to do with the peak focusing. Those were some thoughts on the video quality of the RX100. Where'd the camera go? Where did the camera go? So the video capabilities of this camera are absolutely outstanding, from the slow motion to the quality of the video, the focusing abilities, all of it are absolutely outstanding. The number one reason in my mind to buy this camera is its video qualities. From a vlogging perspective, it's probably the best vlogging camera in the market at this point, Sony RX100 Mark V. Let's now talk about it from a photography perspective. After all, it is a camera and this is photography TV. So from a photography perspective, I'm going to put up some images, just roll through some images that I took on that same recent vacation camping with my kids that I used exclusively this camera during that outing. So you can see the different quality pictures that it was able to take. From a user perspective, I hit on some of the key features earlier with the extremely fast shutter speed capabilities, the extremely fast multi-burst images per second that it's able to do at 24 images per second. Those are some really unique features. Also, the viewfinder, again, does make a benefit for a compact camera to have a viewfinder. Now, what I found from a photography perspective is this is somewhat similar to shooting with a phone. Mostly, not necessarily from the quality perspective, but from the size of it. One thing that I struggle with in shooting with a phone is just using something so small to capture an image. Now, having the viewfinder, I do see as a benefit different from a phone, but I do struggle with just having a really small, compact camera compared to here's a Sony a7 II, a much bigger camera, which obviously convenience of size is important, but I find the ergonomics of a bigger camera better and more comfortable for me. But compact, ease of convenience is a big benefit to this. So from a photography perspective, important to note is that it is a crop sensor camera. Obviously, it's not full frame with the compact size. It is a 2.7 crop ratio, and it's a 1-inch sensor size. Now, that's a lot of technical jargon. When I do reviews, I'm not much of a technical guy, but what's important to note about that is even though the aperture is a 1.8 to 2.8, on the low end, variable aperture, even if you're shooting at the most zoomed out setting and using 2.8, it's not going to get the same depth of field because of that small sensor size that something like a full frame image would. So I actually went out and did some shooting to test that. I shot at the same focal length equivalent on a full frame camera compared to this crop sensor, 2.7 crop ratio, the smaller sensor. And you can see these are the exact same shots from a focal length perspective, same aperture, same everything, and you can see the difference in the depth of field that you get with the Sony RX100 compared to like a full frame DSLR. So that's important to note. I don't think anyone would expect a compact camera to get the same image quality of like a big DSLR, but it is still good image quality. My assessment from a photography perspective is it's a little bit better than shooting with a phone from a quality perspective. You can certainly do more with it. That's the benefit, is you can shoot in manual very easily. You can change the settings, change the focus, all of that, much more control. But I found when I was out there shooting, I felt like I was shooting with the phone just due to the smaller size. And the image quality certainly is not that equivalent to a DSLR, in my opinion. Other notable facts from a photography perspective are, what I thought was kind of cool is it's got this pop-up flash, which pops right up. If you needed to, you could actually hold it and bounce it, which is probably pretty small for this small flash, but a pretty notable thing. Got the viewfinder, pop-up flash, some pretty cool features for a very compact camera. And then lastly, from a photography perspective that I wanted to hit on is its low light capabilities. So on that same camping trip, I pulled it out at night, took a low light, very high ISO shot. This is shot at ISO 6400. This is very low light, and I don't think it's the best. It's not that high quality. A lot of noise on the image. The focus is not sharp at all. So I wouldn't say this is going to be a camera that you should expect extremely low light quality images from. But again, that's not really the main purpose of this camera, but I wanted to test it nonetheless. Now, overall, I do say this camera is worth the price, even though it's a very high price. But the reason you should buy it is for its video qualities. I would not recommend this only from a photography perspective, but if you shoot video on the go, vlogs, those types of things, YouTube videos, this is an absolutely fantastic camera. It's gonna give you a great compact size. It's go anywhere. You can take it on the go, shoot, and know that you're gonna get really high quality video and good audio from it as well. So I do say it is a buy. I'm glad that I bought it. I use it for a lot of the video here on Photography TV. So please subscribe to us on Photography TV. Thanks for watching this review of the Sony RX100 Mark V. Have a great day.